the man behind the myth. I was once sitting exactly where you are right now, convinced I understood the game. I didn't. And it cost me everything before it taught me anything. I was young, I was hungry, and I was dangerous. Not because I was smart, but because I was certain. And in the world of money, certainty is the most expensive addiction you can have. I remember the feeling. That rush. You read something. You see a pattern. The numbers line up. And suddenly, you're not just investing anymore. You're playing. You're convinced, deep in your bones convinced, that you figured out something nobody else has. That's exactly what I thought. I had studied the markets. I had tracked the numbers. I had built models in my head that made everything feel clean, logical, predictable. And for a while, for a dangerous, beautiful while, it worked. But here's what I didn't know back then. And here's what nobody told me. The market doesn't care about your confidence. It doesn't care about your models. It doesn't care about how much homework you did or how many hours you stayed up studying charts at 2 a.m. The market is not your teacher. It's not your friend. It's a machine designed to take money from people who think they understand it. And I was one of those people. I started making moves, real moves. I was putting money where my mouth was, and for a stretch, the results backed me up. That's the cruelest part of this story, because when the market rewards you early, it doesn't feel like luck. It feels like skill. It feels like destiny. So I pushed harder. I bet bigger. I moved faster. And the whole time I was sitting on a pile of lies. Lies I didn't even know were lies. Lies that felt like wisdom. Lies that sounded so good, so logical, so obviously true, that questioning them felt almost stupid. 3 lies. That's all it took. 3 beliefs. Things I held on to like gospel, to almost destroy everything I had built. And I wasn't some amateur. I wasn't some guy who stumbled into the market on a whim. I had done the work. I had put in the hours. I had studied harder than most. And it still almost broke me. The crash, when it came, didn't feel like a crash at first. It felt like a correction. A small dip. Something the market does all the time, right? You ride it out. You stay calm. That's what the smart money does. Except this time, the dip didn't stop. I watched the numbers fall, slowly at first, then fast. And the faster they fell, the louder the voice in my head screamed that I should hold, that this was temporary, that the pattern I had built my entire worldview around would fix itself. It didn't fix itself. And in that moment, that raw, ugly, uncomfortable moment, something cracked inside me. Not my portfolio. Not my strategy. Something deeper. My identity cracked because I had built who I was around being someone who understood the market, someone who was ahead of the game, someone who had figured it out while everyone else was still fumbling. And none of that was true. I hit rock bottom, not just financially, mentally, emotionally. I sat with the wreckage and I asked myself a question I had never asked before. How did I get here? Not what went wrong with the trade. Not what number did I miss. But genuinely, how did a person who worked this hard, who studied this much, who believed so completely, how did that person end up here? And the answer wasn't complicated. It was the lies. 3 specific lies that I had accepted as truth. 3 beliefs that felt so natural, so universally accepted, so deeply embedded in how we talk about money, that I never once stopped to question them. But the real damage wasn't the money I lost. It was the lies I believed that put me there. And those same 3 lies, they're not just mine. They're everywhere. They're in every financial video you've watched, every article you've read, every conversation you've had about investing. They are quietly, silently, destroying the financial futures of millions of people right now. And most of those people have no idea. So I'm going to tell you exactly what they are, one by one. And I'm going to show you why they're so convincing. Because the scariest lies aren't the ones that sound wrong. They're the ones that sound right. The first one, it's the lie that has fooled more people than any other belief in the history of the stock market, and it starts with a simple idea. Most people never question. The idea that if you study hard enough, watch closely enough, and think clearly enough, you can predict what the market is going to do next. You can't. And here's why that belief will quietly bankrupt you. My number one, the market is predictable. Let me say that again, slowly. You cannot predict the market. Not you, not me, not the guy in the expensive suit on CNBC with a confident smile and the chart behind him, not the hedge fund manager charging you 2% just to sit in a room and stare at numbers, not the algorithm, not the AI, not anyone. And yet, somehow, predicting the market is the single most popular hobby in the entire world of investing. Think about that for a second. The one thing that is fundamentally, mathematically, historically impossible to do consistently is the one thing that almost every single investor tries to do every single day. That's not bad luck. That's a trap. And I fell into it hard. When I was young, I was obsessed with patterns. I'd watch the market move and I'd see connections everywhere. A dip here looked like a dip from 3 years ago. A surge there reminded me of something I'd read about in the 1970s. My brain was constantly searching, constantly scanning, for the hidden thread that would unlock everything. And here's the thing. Sometimes it worked. That's the cruelest part of this lie. It works. Sometimes. Enough to make you believe. Enough to make you feel like you're onto something real. Enough to keep you coming back, over and over. Like a slot machine that pays out just frequently enough to keep you pulling the lever. But let me put this into perspective for you. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a hurricane. The wind is screaming. The rain is sideways. Everything around you is chaos. Pure, uncontrolled, violent chaos. Now imagine someone walks up to you in the middle of that hurricane and says, "Hey, I can tell you exactly which direction the wind is going to blow in the next 5 seconds." You'd laugh. You'd think they were insane, because you can see the chaos. You can feel it. You know in your gut that nobody can predict that. But the stock market, we don't see the chaos the same way. It comes to us through screens, through clean charts, through smooth lines going up and down, and that makes it feel orderly. It feels like a puzzle that just needs the right person to solve it. It's not a puzzle. It's a hurricane. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the psychology kicks in. And this is the part that Wall Street doesn't want you to understand. Your brain is a pattern-finding machine. That's not a flaw. That's evolution. For thousands of years, your ancestors survived because their brains could spot patterns in chaos. Rustling grass meant a predator. A change in the sky meant a storm. Pattern recognition kept humans alive. But that same brain, the one that kept your ancestors from being eaten, is the exact same brain that looks at a stock chart and says, "I see it. I see the pattern. I know what's coming next." And it's wrong. Not sometimes wrong. Almost always wrong. Because the stock market isn't rustling grass. It's not a storm you can predict by reading the clouds. It's millions of people, each with their own fears, hopes, biases, and bad days, all making decisions at the same time. That's not a pattern. That's controlled chaos with a stock ticker. But here's what really gets me. Here's the part that used to keep me up at night. Wall Street knows this. The people who run the money, the real money, the institutional money, the money that actually moves markets, they know you can't predict the market. They've known it for decades. They've studied it. They've proven it. They've written papers about it. And yet, every single day they put people on television and let them pretend otherwise. Why? Because a scared investor is a profitable investor. Think about it. If you truly believed, deeply, completely believed, that nobody could predict the market, what would you do? You'd stop watching the news every 5 minutes. You'd stop checking your phone. You'd stop calling your broker every time a headline scared you. You'd calm down. You'd think long term. You'd make fewer moves. And fewer moves means fewer fees, fewer trades, less money flowing through the system. So instead, They keep the game going. They keep the experts on TV. They keep the predictions coming. They keep you glued to the screen, reactive, anxious, making decisions based on emotion disguised as information. I used to be that person, glued to the screen, heart racing with every tick, convinced that if I just watched closely enough, I'd catch the wave before everyone else. You know what I was actually doing? I was bailing water out of a sinking boat with a teaspoon, frantically, desperately, and telling myself I was winning. Here's what changed my mind. And it wasn't a book. It wasn't a guru. It wasn't some brilliant insight I had one night. It was a simple exercise. I went back and looked at every single prediction I had made over the past 2 years. Every call, every bet, every time I said, "This is it. This is the move." And I counted how many I got right. The number was so close to 50% that it might as well have been a coin flip. A coin flip. 2 years of work. 2 years of studying. 2 years of believing I had an edge. And my results were statistically indistinguishable from flipping a quarter in the air and letting fate decide. That was the moment the first lie started to crack. But here's the thing. Cracking isn't the same as breaking. Because even after I saw the data, even after I knew, there was still a voice in my head saying, "But what if you just get better? What if you study harder? What if next time you finally crack it?" That voice is the lie talking, and it is loud, because the lie doesn't just live in the market, it lives in you. It's wired into how you think. It's reinforced every single day by the people who profit from your delusion. And letting go of it, that's not just changing a strategy, it's changing who you think you are. But before you can do that, you have to deal with the second lie. And this one is even trickier. Because this lie doesn't just sound smart, it sounds brave. Most people wear it like a badge of honor. And it will quietly destroy your wealth faster than any market crash ever could. Lie number 2, more risk means more money. Take more risk, make more money. Say it out loud. Feel how natural it sounds. Feel how right it feels in your chest. That's the lie talking. And it is one of the most beautifully packaged, perfectly marketed, emotionally satisfying beliefs in the entire history of finance. Because who doesn't want to believe that? Think about it. The idea that if you're just bold enough, brave enough, aggressive enough, the market will reward you. That wealth is for the daring. That playing it safe is the same as playing it stupid. It sounds like power. It sounds like freedom. It sounds like the kind of thing a winner would say. But let me tell you what it actually is. It's a gamble disguised as a strategy. And the house always wins. I learned this the hard way. When I was younger, I was drawn to the big swings, the volatile stocks, the everyone is scared so I'm going in trades. I loved the adrenaline. I loved the story I told myself, that I was braver than the average investor, that I saw opportunities where others saw danger. And sometimes I made a fortune. But here's the part nobody talks about when they're bragging about their big wins. For every person who takes a massive risk and doubles their money in 6 months, there are 100 people who took that exact same risk and lost everything. You just never hear about them. Because losers don't go on podcasts. They don't post on social media. They don't write books. They disappear, quietly, silently, into the statistical graveyard of people who confused courage with recklessness. This is what psychologists call survivorship bias, and it is one of the most dangerous mental traps in the world of investing. Let me make this concrete for you. Imagine 2 people, 2 investors, same starting point, same amount of money, same market. Investor A is aggressive, bold, he's all in on high-risk plays, volatile stocks, speculative bets. He's living for the thrill, and in year 1, he doubles his money. His portfolio is up 100%. He's on fire. He's the guy at the dinner party everyone wants to listen to. Now meet Investor B. Investor B is boring. Disciplined. She doesn't chase the highs. She doesn't care about doubling her money in a year. She builds a diversified portfolio. She rebalances. She stays calm when the market screams. She does nothing exciting. Fast forward 5 years. Investor A, he's had 2 incredible years and 3 devastating ones. His net result after 5 years is barely positive. Maybe he's up 20%. Maybe he's down. The volatility ate him alive. Investor B, she's up 60%. Quietly, consistently, without a single dramatic moment. Fast forward 20 years, Investor A might be broke. Or maybe he got lucky and he's comfortable. The math says it's a coin flip at best. Investor B, she's wealthy, not flashy wealthy, not headline wealthy, but genuinely life-changing, generational wealthy. The boring investor won. Every single time, in the long run, the boring investor wins. And that terrifies people, because boring doesn't feel like winning. Boring feels like losing. But here's the deeper truth, the one that cracked something open in me when I finally understood it. Risk isn't about how much you're willing to lose. Risk is about understanding what you can't afford to lose. That's the concept that changed everything for me. Asymmetric risk. Most people think about risk like this. If I put in $100 and it doubles, I make 100. If it crashes, I lose 100. Same number. Fair game. But that's not how wealth actually works. Losing $100,000 when you have $200,000 doesn't just cut your portfolio in half. It cuts your future in half. It cuts your timeline in half. It cuts your options in half. The damage of losing isn't symmetrical to the reward of winning. Think of it this way. If you lose 50% of your money, you don't need to make 50% to get back to where you started. You need to make 100%. You need to double what's left just to break even. That's not a small detail. That's the entire game. And most aggressive investors, the ones riding the more risk, more reward wave, they never do this math. They never sit down and calculate what a bad year actually cost them in terms of recovery time, in terms of lost compounding, in terms of years shaved off their financial future. They just see the upside. The highlight reel, the dopamine hit of a big win. I used to be that person. I remember one specific trade. I was so confident. Everything in my gut was screaming, this is it. I went in heavy, way heavier than I should have. And for about 3 weeks, I felt like a genius. Then it turned, and the feeling, that gut punch, stomach dropping, oh God feeling, it wasn't just about the money. It was about the realization that I had just handed years of my life to a single decision. One bad bet didn't just cost me money, it cost me time. And time is the one thing you cannot get back. That's when I started thinking about investing completely differently. Not, how do I make the most money? But how do I protect what I already have while still letting it grow? 2 very different questions. And the answer to the second one builds wealth that lasts. But here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. The reason this lie is so hard to let go of. The reason more risk, more money keeps crawling back into your brain isn't because it's logical. It's because of who you think you are. Most of us have built an identity around being someone who takes action, someone who hustles, someone who doesn't play it safe. And in most areas of life, that identity serves you well. But in investing, that identity is a loaded gun pointed at your own financial future. And the third lie, the last one, goes even deeper than identity. This one doesn't just affect how you invest. It affects how you see yourself. It affects whether you even believe you deserve to be wealthy. And for most people, it's the reason they never get there. Why number 3? You need to be smart to be rich. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When you think about wealthy people, truly wealthy people, what do your mind picture? A genius, right? Someone brilliant. Someone who sees the world differently. Someone whose brain just works in a way that other people's brains don't. A prodigy. A visionary. Someone who was basically born with an advantage that the rest of us simply don't have. That's the image. That's the story we've all been told over and over from the time we were kids. Smart people get rich. Average people survive. That's just how it works. Except it doesn't. And this is the lie that scares me the most. Not because it's the most convincing, although it is, but because this lie doesn't just cost you money, it costs you belief. And without belief, nothing else matters. No strategy works. No discipline holds. No amount of information changes anything. Because deep down, underneath all the noise and the advice and the tips, you don't truly believe that wealth is possible for you. And that belief, or lack of it, is the real reason 95% of people never build real wealth. Let me tell you something that took me years to understand. Intelligence is one of the least important factors in long-term wealth creation. Read that again. One of the least important factors. Not irrelevant, but close to the bottom of the list. Dangerously close. Because I have known, personally known, some of the most brilliant minds in finance. People with IQs that would make your head spin. People who could look at a balance sheet and see things that nobody else could see. People who could argue economic theory in their sleep. And some of them broke. Completely, devastatingly broke. And I have known people, quiet, unassuming, completely average people, who built fortunes that would make your jaw drop. The difference between those two groups had nothing to do with intelligence. Not a single thing. So what was it? It was behavior. Just behavior. That's it. That's the whole secret. And it sounds so simple that most people dismiss it. They hear behavior, and they think, yeah, sure, discipline. I've heard that before, and then they go right back to doing exactly what they were doing. But behavior isn't just one thing. It's a collection of habits, responses, and emotional patterns that play out every single day. And most of those patterns, the ones that determine whether you build wealth or destroy it, happen below the surface. You don't even notice them. Let me show you what I mean. Picture two people. Again, same starting point, same market, same opportunity. Person A is a genius, top of their class, sharp as a razor. They can read a market report and understand it in seconds. They know every economic indicator. They can predict, or at least think they can predict, what's coming next. And they're passionate about it. Emotionally invested in every single move they make. Person B is average. Completely, unremarkably average. They're not special. They don't have a gift for numbers. They don't stay up at night analyzing charts. They simply show up. Every month, without fail, they invest a fixed amount of money. They don't check it obsessively. They don't panic when it drops. They don't get euphoric when it rises. They just stay. 1 year later, Person A is probably ahead. Their intelligence gives them an edge in the short term. They make smart calls. They time things well. And they feel incredible about it. 5 years later, the gap is closing. Person A has had some brilliant moves and some costly mistakes. Their emotions have started to interfere with their decisions. The pressure of maintaining their genius status has made them reckless in subtle ways. 20 years later, Person B is wealthy. Person A might be comfortable. Or they might be broke. The variance is enormous. Because intelligence without discipline is like a sports car with no brakes. It goes fast, it looks impressive, and it crashes every single time. I've watched this play out dozens of times in my career. Brilliant people, genuinely brilliant people, who destroyed their own wealth because they couldn't control one thing, themselves. And that's the real enemy here. Not the market, not Wall Street, not the economy, not bad luck. You, your emotions, your ego, your need to be right, your fear of missing out, your inability to sit with discomfort, your tendency to check your phone 30 times a day to see if the number went up or down. These things matter more than your IQ, more than your education, more than your connections, more than anything. And here's the part that should feel liberating, even though it might not at first. Behavior is something you can change. Intelligence? You're largely stuck with what you have. You can learn more. You can sharpen your mind. But your raw cognitive ability, the thing the smart people get rich myth is built on, that's mostly fixed. But behavior is a skill. It's a practice. It's something you build day by day, decision by decision. The average person with disciplined behavior will, every single time without exception, outperform the genius with wild emotions over any meaningful period of time. That's not an opinion. That's a pattern I have watched repeat itself hundreds of times across decades of investing. And it terrifies me. Not because of what it means for the market, but because of what it means about how we teach people about money. We teach them facts. We teach them formulas. We teach them strategies. We teach them how to read charts and understand economics and pick stocks. And we almost never teach them the one thing that actually determines whether they succeed or fail. How to handle their own mind. How to sit with fear without acting on it. How to feel excitement without chasing it. How to watch their money drop 30% and do nothing. Not because they don't care, but because they understand that doing nothing is the most powerful move on the board. That's not intelligence. That's emotional architecture. And building it is the hardest, most unglamorous, most important work you will ever do with your money. But here's what I want you to sit with before we get to the final piece of this. These three lies: the predictability myth, the risk myth, and the intelligence myth. They didn't just appear out of nowhere. Someone built them. Someone designed them. And the reason they're so perfectly crafted, so emotionally satisfying, so impossible to shake, has nothing to do with truth. It has everything to do with profit. And the people profiting from your confusion, they don't want you to wake up. But you're about to. The truth nobody tells you. Let me pull back the curtain completely. Everything I just told you, the three lies, the myths, the beliefs that have been quietly shaping how you think about money your entire life, none of them are accidents. They were built deliberately, carefully, and with one single purpose in mind: to keep you in the game the way they want you to play it, not the way that's best for you. The way that's best for them, and them, isn't some shadowy conspiracy. It's not some secret society meeting in a dark room deciding how to trick you. It's far more mundane than that. Far more boring. And far more dangerous because of how boring it is. It's a system, a machine, a structure that has been carefully built over decades to extract money from people who don't understand how it works. And the three lies? They are the oil that keeps that machine running. Think about it. If everyone understood that the market is unpredictable, truly understood it in their bones, what would happen? People would stop trading so much. They'd stop checking their portfolios every hour. They'd stop calling brokers. They'd stop buying expensive financial products designed to beat the market. The entire short-term trading industry, worth billions of dollars, would shrink overnight. So the myth stays alive. The experts stay on TV. The predictions keep coming, not because they're useful, because they're profitable. Now layer on the second lie. More risk, more money. What does that do to the average investor? It pushes them toward volatile, high-fee, high-churn products. It makes them comfortable with speculation. It turns investing into something closer to gambling, and gambling is one of the most profitable businesses on the planet. The house always wins. And on Wall Street, the house is wearing a very expensive suit and calling itself an investment bank. And the third lie? You need to be smart to be rich. That one is the most sinister of all. Because that lie doesn't just keep you buying bad products. It keeps you passive. It keeps you believing that wealth is something that happens to other people, smarter people, more deserving people. And so you never fully commit to the one thing that would actually change your life. You never commit to changing your behavior. You never commit to building the emotional discipline that separates the 5% from the 95%. Because deep down, a part of you believes you're not the type. And that belief, that quiet, whispered, barely conscious belief that wealth isn't really for someone like you, that is worth more to the system than any stock tip ever could be. Because a person who doesn't believe they can win will never truly fight to win. And a person who never fights, they never win. And a person who never wins keeps putting money back into the machine. Forever. That's not a conspiracy. That's just math. Now, I want to be clear about something, because I know how this sounds. I know it sounds like I'm blaming the system, like I'm pointing fingers at Wall Street and saying they're the villain. They're not the villain. I was the villain for years, not because I was malicious, but because I was asleep. I was sleepwalking through the biggest financial decisions of my life, guided entirely by beliefs I never once questioned. And here is what I learned when I finally woke up. The market will always be chaos. Let me say that one more time. Let it land. The market will always be chaos. It will always be unpredictable. It will always be volatile. It will always have moments that terrify you and moments that intoxicate you. Nothing about that is going to change. Not tomorrow, not next year, not in your lifetime. And that used to scare me. For a long time, that fact, the raw, uncomfortable, undeniable fact that no one controls this thing made me feel helpless. But then I realized something. The chaos isn't the problem. My response to the chaos, that was the problem. My response to the chaos, that was the problem. And my response, that part, that is entirely, completely, 100% within my control. That's where the real game is played. Not in predicting the next move. Not in finding the perfect stock. Not in being the smartest person in the room. In building a system, a life system, that works regardless of what the market does. A system built on 3 things. And they are painfully simple. Almost insultingly so. First, time. Not timing. Time. The single most powerful force in wealth creation is not intelligence, not risk, not luck. It is the boring, unglamorous, brutally patient act of staying invested for a long time. Decades. Not months. Not years. Decades. Compounding is not a strategy. It is a law. And it rewards patience above all else. Second, behavior. Not knowledge. Behavior. The way you respond when your portfolio drops 40%, and every instinct in your body is screaming at you to sell. The way you stay when everyone around you is running. The way you do nothing, when doing nothing feels like the hardest thing in the world. That emotional discipline is worth more than any IQ, any education, any tip. And third, simplicity. Not complexity, simplicity. The wealthiest people I know don't have complicated systems. They don't have 17 different strategies running at once. They have one clear, simple approach, and they stick to it. Through the crashes, through the booms, through the noise, through all of it. Simple, patient, disciplined. That's it. That's the entire playbook. And I know how underwhelming that sounds. You came here looking for a secret, a hack, a shortcut, something that would make this easier, faster, more exciting. And I just told you the answer is boring. But here's the thing. The fact that it's boring, that's exactly why it works. Because the market doesn't reward excitement. It punishes it. The market rewards the people who can sit in silence while everyone else is screaming. The people who can hold steady while the world is falling apart around them. The people who have built something inside themselves, some quiet, unshakable foundation that doesn't crack when the numbers go red. That foundation isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It isn't luck. It's a choice. A choice you make every single day. A choice to not react, to not chase, to not let the noise dictate your decisions. A choice to trust the system over the moment. I spent years chasing the wrong thing, believing the wrong lies, playing the game the way the game wanted me to play it. And it almost cost me everything. But the moment I actually stopped and asked myself, what if everything I believe about this is wrong? That's when things started to change. Not overnight, not dramatically, not with some big cinematic moment of clarity. Slowly, quietly. The way real wealth is actually built. You are not one stock pick away from changing your life. You are not one tip away from financial freedom. You are not one lucky break away from everything you want. You are one belief away. One shift in how you see this game. One crack in the armor of the lies you've been carrying. One quiet moment where you decide, genuinely decide, that you are done playing by rules that were never written for your benefit. The market will keep moving. It will keep crashing and climbing and confusing you. That's never going to stop. But you can stop being the person it eats alive. You can become the person who wins. Not because you're smarter, not because you're braver, but because you finally understood what the game actually is. And now, you're playing it right.